We're trying to get obviously players who expect to find excellence on the baseball field, but are willing to be coached and challenged. But then the last piece of it, as I mentioned to you, I think the last question I always ask players when we recruit them is everything lines up. You're qualified as a baseball player. You're qualified as a student. The last thing I'm going to have to ask you is,
Arteaga drives one to center. Miller hustling over. Diving catch by Ian Miller. A great catch.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Nine Hope Podcast. I'm Ian Miller. I am joined today by an absolute legend in the college baseball industry, in the game of baseball, David Esker, head coach, the Stanford Cardinals baseball program. What's going on, Coach?
how you doing, Ian? You're using that term legend very loosely. If you're,
I appreciate it. No, just man, obviously, legend is a big word, but just kind of looking at what you've been able to accomplish over the entirety of your career, right? So obviously, I have some accolades here that is common knowledge to people if they do some research on you. So 24 seasons so far as the head coach in the Pac-12, right? You've already finished sixth at the helm of the Stanford program, right? You're going into your seventh year. And you've had a ton of success, right? Obviously, we'll touch on winning percentage a little bit, but man, what has it been like? Kind of coming back to where it all started for you. You were a walk-on, right? I'd love to maybe ask you a little bit about that. Your progression kind of through your career, right? You played shortstop, national championship team. Man, what was it like, kind of coming back to where it all started?
well, it's been a dream come true. I really, it's beyond a dream because I don't know that I could have even dreamt that. I know during the years when I first became an assistant coach and I came back here to Stanford, a lot of the alumni, they kind of teased me that I was the heir apparent, right? That I would take over for Coach Marquis. And I thought it was flattering that some really great players had thought that I would eventually become the head coach here. But once I left and I knew that if I ever had a chance to come back to Stanford, I would have to prove myself somewhere else and also just kind of sharpen my skills and leave if I ever had a chance to come back. So after 6 years of being an assistant coach, I took the head assistant coach at Pepperdine University and was a coach there for 3 years. And we had some really good teams and some great success, and was very fortunate to have that experience. But then got the opportunity to go to Cal Berkeley, and after staying there for 18 years, I really didn't think that that my destiny would be to come back to Stanford at any one point after you've been at Cal for 18 years. But the stars aligned, and somehow it worked out. Coach Marcus was great to me as far as really recommending that I take over the program and ask and really giving me his blessing. And so I think our long history over the years helped into that. And then him wanting to make sure that and hoping that the program will be turned over to someone who knew the program inside and out and had strong emotional ties to the Stanford baseball program and knew what it took him to build the program and what he in the foundation that he built Stanford baseball under. I know that was important to him, and obviously lucky that the athletic department and Bernard Muir, the athletic director, felt the same way.
I love it. So obviously, kind of continuing the stellar success of the program was important to you. Like we said, you're entering the seventh year as the head coach, going into the seventh season. I'd love to touch on the success you've had kind of at the helm, man. So a 711 winning percentage in the last 6 seasons. What has been the coaching philosophy? What has been the philosophy of what you've been teaching these young men to get the most out of them like this? You guys are playing at an elite, academic institution where you guys are playing elite competition consistently. What has been, what can you attribute that success to? What are you teaching these young men?
Well, obviously we've got great players, and Coach Thomas Eager has done a fantastic job of recruiting and getting just great talent who were willing to do the work that it took to get into Stanford. Um, I think we do what no one else does, in the sense that Stanford is not going to bend their academic standards for our baseball team, and they don't do that. That makes it tough, but also when you get the kids who commit to that type of excellence in the classroom, we're getting kids who know how to work hard and are willing to push themselves, who are expect they expect the most out of themselves as well. Those players are fairly easy to coach. You may have to you have to mold them a little bit, and as to be honest, at Stanford, I have to teach them to be less hard on themselves than they typically are, and to get them to play with freedom, to get them to play loose, is probably more of our challenge here, because they are all self-driven, but they're also driven by perfection. And, a lot of them would hope that baseball would be a linear game, that if they did A, B, and C, success is going to happen. Unfortunately, sports not like that, and baseball in particular is not like that. I mean, it is a competition, and the competition is trying to beat you. And so to get them to be competitive is a focus of ours. But really, what is that? And I always want to remind our players that baseball it's a confrontational game. And your training. The reason you spend all that time in the batting cage or the bullpen is so that you get ready for the confrontation. And it's not a dance recital. It's not a music recital. We're not getting judged on our technique. We're not getting judged on how pretty we look. It is win lose, right? And it's kind of that squared circle when it's pitcher versus hitter, hitter versus pitcher, and then just the team camaraderie and the team aspect of it. Can we get our guys to develop that brotherhood, which allows us to have that synergy where 1+1 doesn't equal 2, right? When we add up all 9 of our players, hopefully it adds up to 10 or 11, that we play greater than the sum of our parts. And so when I came back to Stanford, my number one goal, I was always asked, like, did you come back to win a national title? Was fortunate to win a national title as a player. My progress and my journey was not linear, and it was not sloped upward. There was a lot of bumps. Baseball has brought me to my knees more than once, but the question was always asked, did I come to win a national title? And God, that would be great, boy, to deliver a national title to my alma mater after winning one as a player. But really, what I came here to do is I wanted to deliver the same experience that I had as a player here at Stanford. And here's what that experience was. I got a chance to play with my best friends. And some of those friends are as close to me as brothers. They are family to me. And we won a national title because I got a chance to play with my brothers and go chase a national championship. We'd fight for each other. We would stand up for each other. We had as close a brotherhood as you could have, and that resulted in a national title. But that also was it was a progressive. The teams that I played for prior to that, I mean, we stood on their shoulders to win a national title. There was a lot of history involved there. There was a lot of legacy that was involved there. So for me, the thing I wanted to do is I wanted to deliver the same experience that I had. I wanted to practice hard and train hard at baseball, but I also wanted to foster a program that had camaraderie as its core, a culture as its core, and then I take my chances playing the best of the best. I'll take my chances, my team versus your team. If I had a bunch of players that believed in each other, and that whether on their field, they respected who they were playing for, and if they're on the rail, they're backing the guy who's on the field because they know what it took for him to get out there, and they knew that he's representing them.
I love it. I love it. That makes total sense to me. You touched a little bit about, we talked about it. Stanford is a prestigious academic institution, right? Top in its class, obviously. And they, at least admissions won't bend the academic, requirements for baseball for athletes, whatever it is. Regarding grades, right? What can a player expect in high school, if they even want to enter the Stanford competition, right? Even if they want to enter the conversation, right? Say they're good enough athletic wise, they have great character, they have great makeup, they fit the bill for what you're looking for. What should they disqualify themselves, or get realistic on what if their grades aren't a certain level?
Well, if they expect that their high school career will descend in challenge, they're probably not going to be at Stanford. Like, Stanford admissions in Stanford here, they expect you to continue to challenge yourself throughout high school, and they expect you to sprint through the finish line of graduation and to not pull a parachute and decide to kind of back off the gas as you're a senior. So, well, there is no, and I wish I knew. I don't know the floor of what it takes to get to Stanford. I know we continue to bring them quality students to try to get guidance as far as qualified applicants. But I do know that we are expected to get students who continually challenge themselves throughout high school, which means if you're taking two APs as a junior, you're probably going to take, you're going to continue to take two, if not three, as a senior. You're going to try to challenge yourself with your curriculum to the best of your ability. And the best way I describe it is, hey, you don't get a chance to back off the gas as a senior. They expect you to. They want someone who has a thirst for learning and has a thirst for continuing to challenge themselves. They've got to be able to display that in how they choose their classes and what their high school curriculum is. Some kids are just naturally gravitate towards they expect excellence out of themselves, and they continually want to be challenged in the classroom. And then we've got to find players who can play at a national level and hopefully buy into our program and what the culture is with us. And we're trying to get obviously players who expect to find excellence on the baseball field, but are willing to be coached and challenged. But then the last piece of it, as I mentioned to you, I think the last question I always ask players when we recruit them is everything lines up. You're qualified as a baseball player. You're qualified as a student. The last thing I'm going to have to ask you is if you're not looking to find a close personal relationship with your coaches and your teammates, this will probably not be the place for you.
I love it. I love it. I love that. So that's, culture, locker room, clubhouse culture is huge. Obviously building the bond, with the support staff, with, the coaching staff, the head coach, manager, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's huge. Obviously, team chemistry is big, especially you are recruiting some of the top talent from around the country, right? Around the world, however you want to say it. Obviously, you are going to have a bunch of, alpha males from where they're coming from, all in one locker room that have excelled in everything that they've done up until this point, right? In the classroom, on the field, right off the field, whatever it is. So obviously, right, if it's a good fit, right? Do you want to be a brotherhood behind the scenes in the locker room and stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that, attributes to the success you guys have had on the field, right? So 3 consecutive College World Series appearances. I keep hitting on that winning percentage. That's incredible. Over the past 6 years, man, offensively, what has been the mindset? What has been the approach? My wife, we had our daughter, she is just about 6 months. Man, so we were watching you guys play on TV while she was, in labor and everything, man. So it was cool to, see what has been the offensive approach over the last 6 years that has just, proven.
Well, I've been blessed. I've had hitting coaches and coaches who have done a great job of preparing and training our players. And that's one thing we've kind of focused on as far as um, I think I learned that when I was a hitting coach early on in my career, when I felt like I needed to spew as much knowledge as I had in my brain and tell it to everybody. But I soon found out that it's more important that I learned to train hitters than to instruct hitters. And so our thing is to try to create an atmosphere that our drills will do the training and we make it difficult. We don't try to bring drills that are going to be 90% successful, 80% successful. We're trying to challenge them. We're trying to challenge the bat. I kind of philosophically for us, I know that if we're going to be ready to play day one of come out of the chute and be ready to hit, we're going to have to be short to the fastball, right? And 92, 93 miles an hour is not gas in our game anymore. It is another day at the office, right? And no one can be coming back when 93, 94 and say, man, that guy's throwing hard. He's not throwing hard. He's throwing what everybody throws, right? And a lot of people are touching 95s this day. So we got to be ready for the fastball, and we got to train to be short and direct to the fastball. I want to make sure that our guys they stay offensive to the breaking pitch. I tell them when the ball spins, we don't go defense, we stay offense. And we're looking for the right one to hit, and we're trying to be aggressive to the offensive pitch up in the zone. Or not necessarily anyone's going to hit a good breaking ball. Can we hit bad breaking balls, right? And can we stay tough on the good ones, but hit bad ones? And so just keeping their mindset that we're going to stay offensive, whether it's off speed or not off speed, and we're going to train for that. We're going to try to stay in the zone. We're going to try to be tough outs. We're going to try to be adjustable. Nowadays I hear there's a big push, and everyone uses the term "be on time, be on time." Well, you know what? You can't be out every time you're off time. On time is a great goal, but you can't be out when you're a little bit off time late, and you can't be out when you're a little off time out front. So we need to have adjustability to be the best offensive player we can be. And then we're trying to put our best bat speed as often as we can on as many pitches as we can. We train low and hard. That is people when they come watch us hit, if they said how often we talk about squaring the baseball low and hard, and yet we've been leading the league in home runs for the last 2 years. And we understand that, hey, we want to get the ball in the air, we want to drive the ball, but I think it's a byproduct of squaring the baseball as often as we possibly can. So whether it's being short to the fastball, whether it's the challenge drills that we bring into being good at the fastball, whether it's offensively, we're going to stay offensive to spin, and we're going to try to make sure that we don't back it off and get defensive. We're going to be adjustable to pitches. We got to have adjustability. We can't just have a grooved swing. And I'll be honest, I think a few years ago, I had a colleague of mine. We played them once, and I asked him. We had a lot of young players, and I said, "So what'd you think of our young guys?" He's like, "You got a lot of groove swings." And he was right. I had a lot of guys who loved to go up to the cages and work on their swings. They didn't work on hitting. So they put a ball on a tee and they work on the same ball over and over, hit to the back of the cage. But what about when the ball is a little up, down, inside, outside, deep, and out front, right? So we talk a lot about we got those cages out there. We love them working out there, but I want them to work on hitting. I don't want them to spend all the time working on their swing. And again, it is not a dance competition or a musical recital. When we hit, it is man on man, and it doesn't matter how you feel. You got to be ready to be able to produce even when you don't have your best swing, right?
Mhm.
So we try to get them competitive, and we try to make sure that they're ready to compete at a high level, and kind of forget, as crazy as it sounds, as smart as our guys are at Stanford. We try to make sure that they can play with freedom, and they're not thinking about mechanics. They're trained to react and stay aggressive.
Love it. Love it, love it. That fits perfect into somebody that I've shared a locker room with. So Nico Horner, who was under your tutelage, under your guidance, right? You've had, what is it right here? 8 first round players drafted under your guidance, right? That's another machine. Just seeing how that guy goes about his business, seeing how he goes about his business off the field, his preparation, just the knowledge, the information, just being a student of the game. That's incredible, man. I wanted to ask you a little bit because I've seen kind of how he prepares defensively day in and day out. Spent some time with him in spring training, spent some time with him at the alternate site. Actually, when I was up with the Cubs for a couple days, he was there, man. So I can say I shared a locker room with him. Proud of that, man. But seeing how he is as a professional, how he goes about his business. What's the defensive philosophy? At Stanford, I've played with a couple other players, man, that have just been lights out, and defense was an all around like strong suit in every person's game that I've played with from Stanford.
Yeah, we probably take more balls live off the bat than we do off of fungo, and not that we don't break it down and try to make sure they're fundamentally sound. But to be honest, I kind of work backwards, and Nico's one of those guys you could work backwards. If he's catching every ball, if only 8 or 9 of the perfect points the defense are showing up, then that's good enough right now, right? And he can continue to get better and continue to work on that. But I'm not a coach that tries to polish players just so I feel good about that I'm instructing them. If it's working, I'm not changing it, right? And so, one, he had unbelievable hands and great athletic ability. I used to ask him if he was a gymnast when he was young, and he said he played soccer. He was not a gymnast, but the things he could do. And I'll be honest, I like the freedom that he worked with as well. My year, I would warm him up prior to the game and hit him fungos, and by the time he get him his work, I remember sometimes he would start to do some of those, like those Brandon Crawford tricks defensively, which was completely fine for me because I love the creativity that showed. I love the fact that he just didn't stay. He wasn't a robot. And if he goes behind the back feed to the second baseman or a bounce pass between his legs or catching it and jump and throw in the air, I think there's a time for that because I love that creativity that someone can show on the field. He got his work done. He's ready to play. But then it was his time to kind of enjoy what he enjoyed doing. He loved taking ground balls and loved getting ready to play defense. He was so consistent, had a really accurate arm. He could really boil the game down into just playing. But then there's parts of it that, as a coach, and I think this is the one thing that I had to, a lesson I taught to some of our young hitting coaches. When we got there, the one thing Nico didn't do is he could not pull the ball in the air. When he hit the ball to the pull side, he could chop it, or he'd have a little hook and topspin into the six hole.
Mm,
But the reality was, I had to make sure our coaches that we didn't feel like we were coaching him to coach. And the reason I said that is, hey, he's capable of putting up big numbers doing it the way he's doing it right now. If you focus on that weakness, you could make him worse right now. That it's something that he will eventually learn as he progresses. He will pull the ball in the air and be able to get backspin. But right now, for us, since I only had him for 1 year, our job is to get him ready to have the best year possible, right? And so sometimes, which is my big lesson, your game and your journey of your game, it's a progression. It doesn't have to all come at once. It is, I'm sometimes our kids, they get caught up in watching a lot of YouTube videos and slowing down major league swings. But the reality is that major leaguer didn't have that swing when he was a freshman in college. He's tweaked that some. It's kind of developed. Some of those guys are told to stay away from hitting the ball on the ground because they're not going to get paid that way. Okay,
mm.
but those are developmental stages of their baseball career, and so Nico had an unbelievable year for us, and he does pull the ball with backspin in the air now, and that was kind of the last piece. If I'm going to have a last piece for a hitter, pulling the ball in the air is probably the last piece I want him to have.
Makes sense. Makes a ton of sense. Obviously, seeing like his skill set, just seeing how quick he is, how fast he is. If he puts the ball in play, obviously he's got a chance to, get on base, do damage. Yeah, he's just an absolute machine. That's probably a good way to kind of sum it up
Oh, for
on
sure.
that kind of level. An absolute machine.
That
And
gold
just
glove, that gold glove surprises nobody.
no, absolutely not. And the hard work that obviously people, I don't need to sing his praises to kind of, validate his hard work. It's incredible. You can see it, on YouTube, I'm sure. Obviously there's clips about that.
Well,
So
and the one thing about Nico, which I've always been big on, and even ahead of the curve. I think a little bit. I always have used machines as a challenge part to develop hitting. And when I came here, we hit off the machine quite a bit, and Nico was the guy that embraced it. He made it cool to try to do the hard drills. It's harder. Success didn't come as quickly when you put a little challenge into it. And yet he would bring out two or three guys. He set up that machine on the field and he would do the hardest drill and loved it. And so he was spreading throughout the team like, no, the challenge is the cool thing, right? Not just doing tee and toss and feeling good about your swing. No, the fact that we're working on a hard drill to try to improve our game, that's cool. And I've been forever thankful that he was able to embrace those things because I think that there was a time where the kids only liked to do the drills they were good at versus the drills that they were not as good at, and then let over time your progression in those drills that be the sign that you're getting better.
absolutely. Yeah. Where, you're kind of not forcing the issue or testing the boundaries, but you're trying to maximize your potential. You're not staying stagnant, at your skill level and kind of how you're practicing, right? We touched on.
Well, and that's the other part which I believe in is that we're gonna test you. I'm looking for the edge of your ability, right? And I'm looking for how can we work on the edges and the margins to kind of expand your ability. So the reality is I'm gonna look for drills that you fail at, right? I don't want to know the drill that you can do 10 out of 10. I'm looking for the drills that challenge you some, and you've got to be comfortable. right, that you're not getting judged, that you're not a good player, or that you're failing. That the reality is, with effort over time, if you can do drills that are challenging and maybe you don't start off good at, with effort over time, if you improve, then you're improving.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So I was gonna, kind of translate that into practice, maybe what your practices look like. So not to keep going back to it, the winning percentage is unreal. So playing at a high level, I'm sure you have to practice at a high level. But obviously, the different times of the season, right? Off season, those practices and that preparation might look a little different as opposed to after the holidays, you're going to start ramping it up. It's a little bit preseason, and then in season, the workouts are going to the workload overall, I'm sure, is going to look a lot different. So right now, in the winter leading up to the new year, what do the workouts look like, and kind of what's the intensity?
Well, obviously repetition becomes a big part of what the fall is like for us, right? I don't pay a lot of attention to the results and what it looks like in an inter squad game, or even an outside opponent game. And I'm always one to say that I watch fall baseball with one eye. I mean, I'm not really paying attention, but what I am paying attention is, like, are you putting in the time and the effort to advance your skill? And then we're going to put it together. When we get back in January, we're going to, then it's game mode. And I remember that a little bit as a player. When I got here as a freshman, I remember playing the freshman fall and thinking, even as a walk-on, I was like, this ain't very much different than my summer baseball. But then I got pitchers who are working on one pitch, or a guy who's working on fastball commands, who's throwing mostly fastballs, and somebody he's been a starter for 3 years. So maybe the fall to him is he's just getting loose and getting pitches
Mm,
in. He's not. But I do remember in January, the first inter squad game, as we're ramping up for the season, going good morning, good afternoon, good night, when the Friday starter pitched
that's
against us,
right.
because now he's getting ready to play real baseball,
It
right?
makes
So,
yeah.
so again, it's the stages that you're going through, and one, we're trying to move the needle on some guys on what it's going to take for them to be able to play when the lights turn on, or when the practices start to ramp up. And then we got freshmen who, some freshmen, they'll play the worst baseball they've ever played in their career, their freshman fall. Like, they got school, they got weights, they're playing baseball, the game keeps coming at them hard. So I really don't even pay attention to that. And again, through my experience, we had a freshman my senior year. I don't think he got a hit the whole fall. He's a kid from Massachusetts. He's away from home. He's at school. He's practicing, and all of a sudden he's underwater. He doesn't play a lick. Now we come back in January, and there's an opening, and for some reason we didn't even understand. He gets the opening day call. He gets a couple hits. By the end of the year, he is the MVP of the regionals. He's the MVP of the College World Series, and he's a freshman All-American. No clue that he was going to be that guy after fall baseball, right? So the freshman players, they usually don't show close to where they're going to be until January, after they go home for Christmas and they get a little home cooking, and they kind of get there, and then by the time Christmas break is over, they're tired of mom and dad's rules, and they want to get back to that freedom they had at college, and then they're ready to be here and relax and play closer to themselves.
It makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. So you touched on a little bit about your walk on experience. So when you first showed up, not being absolutely blown away necessarily with the style of play, the level of play. Obviously, what you know now, they were working on something. But what was the walk on experience like for you? And why were you in that situation?
So unrecruited out of high school, and kind of crazy. I ended up at Stanford probably for all the wrong reasons, in the sense that I was delusional. I had applied. I got into two schools. I got into UCLA and Stanford. UCLA had a freshman All American shortstop, and Stanford shortstop hit 214 my senior year in high school. They had another shortstop, and I see him out to this day, Kurt Stillwell, who was a major leaguer for many years, and now works for the Scott Boras Corporation. I see Kurt out, and I say, "You're one of the reasons I came to Stanford." He signed as a first-round draft pick. He was supposed to go to Stanford.
It's incredible.
So I figured I'd go to Stanford and I would just beat out whoever they had there, not knowing really behind the scenes what going in as a walk-on, an unrecruited walk-on. I went to a hitting camp after my senior year of high school. So these are camps for everywhere and everyone but seniors. But I said since I'd got into school, I would go to their hitting camp and just introduce myself and hopefully hit in front of them for a couple of days and find out when tryouts were. So I remember coming and telling Coach Marquis, "Hey, I've been admitted to Stanford. When are tryouts, Coach?" And so the first day he says, "Well, come during orientation and we'll set up a tryout for you." I think by the end of the week, I had kind of performed well enough where I looked like a baseball player. And I remember at the end of the week, I said, "So, Coach, you want me to come find you during orientation to set up a tryout?" And he said, "Well, just find me during orientation. You won't try out. You'll just start the fall with us." For me, I was trying out the whole fall. And I was just fortunate enough. When I walked out to shortstop, my first day of practice, there was 5 shortstops. There was 4 scholarship shortstops and me. You know what? And I just had to stay persevering. I really had told myself what I wanted to do as a walk-on is if I could get into a good program, I would abuse their facilities and I would make myself a good player. Like, just give me a place with a batting cage, give me a place with some balls, give me a place with a few players who will stay after practice with me. I will find a way to make myself a good player. Well, fortunately, I kind of played well enough, and I didn't start out. When we had fall games that year, some of the players would come out at 3:15, and practice started at 1:15. I started off as a 3:15 player. Hey, come out and just report to the cages, and then once the game's over, come on down. But I played pretty well in a couple practice settings. That all of a sudden, I was coming out to play at the 1:15 game. The shortstop, who was the starting shortstop, who he might have hit 214 that year. He was the best defensive shortstop I've ever seen to this day. To this day, John Verducci is the best defensive shortstop I've ever seen. He got to AAA as a pro, but he didn't have to hit much. Uh, I think he was 2 years all 6-pack, hitting under 300. That's how good defensively he was. And anyway, fortunate for me, he was an engineer. He had labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. All of a sudden, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was starting at shortstop against outside competition and just had to play well. And I was fortunate that I did. By the end of the fall, I was the backup shortstop. I wasn't going to beat him out, but I'd risen to number 2, and I played a lot of defense. I played very well defensively, so I was kind of a defensive replacement as a freshman. But that was my intro. I never thought I was making the team. My parents would ask me what it looked like. I'm like, I don't know, and I knew how well I was playing. I was making the team, but I never let myself kind of let go of that edge that I was still trying to make the team. Even up to the first weekend, the first trip we had was to Hawaii. It was a huge trip, and traveling is a big deal when you're in a program. But I guess at that point, I knew I was the backup shortstop, so I was going to travel. But I never let off the gas. I was gonna try to make sure that it was kind of a no brainer. And hey, even after that, my career was not linear. I was the backup shortstop. Eventually, when he left, I was the starting shortstop. My junior year, I was the opening day shortstop. Did not play well enough to keep the job. That was my fault. I wasn't ready mentally to take that job. Um, but then as a senior, I put myself in a position to get another chance, and got a chance to take the job and run with it at some point. And obviously, it's the greatest baseball year of my life, winning a national title with my brothers.
I love it. That's amazing, man. So you touched a little bit on resilience, right? That's kind of the common theme, at least through the entirety of your freshman season. Kind of persevering, being resilient. That's what I try to preach with the 9 Hole podcast. So maybe these walk on type players, maybe scrappy players that don't get the love or acknowledgement, or maybe the buzz that they think they deserve, or maybe that they're capable of. Man, like maybe I was cut from an 8th grade Legion team, and it absolutely just broke my heart, man. I'm like, I'm about to be in high school and I'm getting cut from a baseball team. What kind of advice could you give to somebody maybe in high school with the 9-hole type mindset that is maybe kind of a grinder behind the scenes, underdog type player? What can you speak to that?
Well, so the lesson I learned here at Stanford is the best players play, right? And here at Stanford, you always hear the horror stories like, oh, they're just going to play the scholarship guys because that's their guy, right? But the best programs play the best players. And I think I've learned that even as a coach, like I don't care how you get here. We're going to play the players that play the best or give this team the best chance to win, right? And so learning what it takes to help your team win, right? And you may be a piece. You may not have to be the 3 or 4 hole hitter, right? If you may have to be a piece, but you've got to be somebody who puts in the time and the hours, and maybe as that walk on, you've got to be willing to make decisions to do things that not no other players are willing to do. You just might, and you're going to have to be a good teammate. I always tell those guys who have to wait in the background is I will know your value to this team that when you do get your chance, are all 34 guys on the rail and in that batter's box with you, or is all 34 players on that mound just doing whatever they can to help you out? I use the term as a baseball player. I want you to be a great spotter, right? So I want you to be a great spotter, not only in the weight room, because anybody who knows if you lift weights by yourself, you've got to rack the bar as soon as you feel failure. But if you have a great spotter, he can get 3 or 4 more reps out of you even after you would have failed, right? So I talk about on the baseball field, first of all, I need a debate. We take great pride in the weight room, and that's something that we're very good at is developing strength and size here. And I love it that in the off season when coaches tell us that our baseball team walked in the stadium and we look like a football team. I love that because I know that's not how they got here, but I know that's because the time and effort they put in. But I ask a lot of our players as far as spirit and emotion on the sidelines, and it's not to be a cheerleader. I'm asking them to spot their brother, right? Because we all see we all see the guy who's going for the squat record, and they got everyone around the rack,
Mm.
and they're all just trying to encourage this guy to get him through. I ask a lot of our teams to be able to with a little spirit and enthusiasm, how are you going to spot and get that rep out of this guy? It may be an inning, it may be a pitch, it may be an at bat, it might be one hitter, but there are these moments that the guy needs a little spotting on the field.
Being a good spotter. That's fantastic right there. That's something that a lot of people can kind of take away from this talk right there. That's a fantastic concept to try to bring the best out of yourself regarding being a teammate. So you talked a little bit about what you're looking for in a young man coming to your program, and obviously touched on what you're hoping to achieve. Recruiting wise, what are you looking for in a high school baseball player?
You know, one of the keys, and I tell this to my recruiting coordinator, Thomas Eager, we don't need to get all the best players, but we need to get the players we do best with, right? We need the kids that we develop best. And maybe it's a certain guy that plays a certain way. And we go like, yeah, you know what? We can really help that guy. We can get the most out of that player. The guy plays with spirit and enthusiasm. That's our type of guy. The guy is, hey, he's got some size and some strengths, and the bat moves well. We do well with those guys. This type of pitcher with this type of repertoire. We've had a few. We can have a couple guys that throw 88, 89 miles an hour as a senior in high school with impeccable command and a great secondary pitch. Those guys develop and they leave here throwing 93, 94 with impeccable command and a bastard second pitch, right? So some of those guys, they don't have to be just the best of the talent that anybody can see. A little bit, I challenge them to like make sure you find the guys we do best with.
Ooh, that's fantastic. It's fantastic. What would be a disqualifier? So if say if you were if you were personally evaluating a young man, a student athlete, a player, or your recruiting coordinator was looking at somebody, what is a disqualifier in your eyes? If you saw something happen.
Yeah. Obviously, like any coach, the guy you may not want is if it goes back to for us is it would be selfishness to some degree, right? I mean, we all want great talent, but man, if you have to compromise yourself to deal with great talent, that just compromises yourself in front of your team and may not be worth it. So, obviously, how you handle yourself, really guys who are resilient that don't get defeated by poor performance. And, hey, if they have a bad at bat, are they still out there? They may have a resume that they're a good player, but maybe when we see them, they do go 0 for 3 or they punch out once. But what kind of player, the guy that we know is a good player, what type of player is he then, right? Um, we're not looking to bring in guys that we've got to emotionally, always kind of uplift. We need resiliency and we need a little toughness. So hey, even a guy that shows a little uh, confrontational attitude, that's not a disqualifier. Actually, we love that guy. Plays a little spirit, he's got a little salt and a little vinegar, right? I mean, that's okay with us too. Guy that loves his teammates. If he shows that he's backing his guys, that's always a plus, right? So talent wise, I think, hey, we're obviously performers. We're looking for guys that can perform, and again, the guys that we do well with. If we see he moves like a player we do well with. Um, there's always those guys that jump off the page. They're big, strong. Their performance says, "Hey, this guy's a plus talent." The scouts love them. That's great, but we're not going to be able to get 30 of those. We need some other guys that are going to help us along the way. And we've had some great stories of guys that came in as just pieces. We just recently had a kid named Alberto Rios, and obviously a story close to my heart is the sense that he had 6 at bats in 2 years. Now he was close and he was in the conversation by his sophomore year, but we had such a good team we never had to go to that level of our roster for depth. But he comes out as a junior and he's a non-scholarship player and he's waited for 2 years. And we always preach to our guys, make sure you're working while you wait. Like don't don't get bitter, get better. So while you're waiting, don't don't sit there and be upset or angry that you're not getting your chance or you're not getting any rope. We need you to get better, and then when you are called on, you're going to be asked to perform if you're going to continue to play. This kid put himself in the best position. He's a team guy. The guys love him. He's the guy that 35 guys are in the batter's box with him when he gets his chance. He's the Pac-12 Player of the Year last year. He had over 400.
It's absurd.
Drafted in the top 10 rounds. A great bonus, signed as a junior, didn't play at all for 2 years. And I'm going to say what put him there and gave him a chance. He played only trying to play the next day. He didn't try to play thinking, if I get my chance, I bet I have a chance to become the Pac-12 Player of the Year. If I play, I bet you I have a chance to hit 400. He just wanted to play one more day. And his team, when he got in the game, I think they played better when he was in there, because if we won when he played, they knew there's a good chance he was playing tomorrow.
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. So you've been around some of the best talent, in college baseball. Um, what could a baseball player do to separate themselves from their peers, their competition, stand out? Whether it's a high school player, college player, you've played professionally, if it's a professional player, whatever it is along their journey, they want to stand out from their competition. What would be your advice to them to kind of utilize that?
I would almost it'd be counterintuitive. Like they would stand out by becoming maybe even more of the crowd, in the sense, like, I think you stand out and you find your best game when you're playing selflessly for
Mm,
the sake of your team. I think you stand out when you play with humility and you understand that your performance or even lack of performance, that it's not about it's not about you. It's a little bit more about like how that affects the rest of your group. And I think, when guys don't perform offensively, well, to be honest, if you take it out to defense, that's kind of the double whammy. Like if you were really true to yourself and this team guy, wouldn't you be more engaged in defense if you weren't helping us offensively? I
Mm.
mean, wouldn't you dial it up on defense if the fact that you felt like you're hurting our team by not performing as well as you want to offensively? Where some players, like, you know they're hurting us offensively, and then mentally they're maybe not alert or not into it, or they compound the mistake. And I'm like, see, that's even more selfish than you think. And you think the fact that you're beating yourself up because your offense is really showing me how much you care about our team. There's just other ways, right? And there's just guys that get it. And I think I've seen the best years happen, and maybe because it's how our program is built, is that selflessness has probably led to more great individual years than anything I've ever seen.
Ooh. So I was just talking on the podcast yesterday about if I could give myself advice, you know, 10 years ago. If I'm 20 years old, in A ball, what kind of advice could I give myself through the rise, through my professional career? Man, I wanted to say, like, it's about the overall product, not just the numbers. So you talking about humility, being a good teammate, not being a detriment to the locker room or the culture or anything like that. Man, it seems like the overall product is important, as opposed to just trying to put up good numbers and be selfish, as opposed to being selfless and playing for the team. I am very grateful for your time. I got two more questions for you. It won't take too much longer. What has been the most memorable or rewarding experience, or happenstance in your career that you can kind of just touch on or elaborate on?
Yeah, great question. God, I've just been blessed, and all of my blessings from baseball come from the fact that baseball has brought me to my knees more than once, right? So I can really appreciate the good times, because baseball will bring, and I tell our guys and I prepare them for it, it will bring you to your knees. I've been there as a player, I've been there as an assistant coach, I've been there as a head coach. And it is about getting up, right? It is about putting yourself in a position to get up, and to get up positively and move and just keep moving forward, right? God, I've had so many of those instances, from winning a national championship as a player, to taking a team at Cal Berkeley that they dropped the program in August, and we go to Omaha that June. But being in that locker room with those players, those 35 players who decided to stay at the school, and play that year out and play for one another, and really deliver to the school and the donors who brought that program back an experience that they would remember forever. To 3 years after that, which I felt like was going to be the most difficult time. I felt like after you cut your program, you lose a lot of street credibility, and I knew that it was going to take us down. But then 3 years later, ending up in a regional final at Texas A&M, where I felt like that may have been my proudest moment as a coach, where I knew that the program was really hurt by them cutting the program, but showing that we could become relevant after that storm. Um, again, my years here at Stanford, all the results have been great, but I think realizing what I came back for has probably been rewarding. When I see that locker room, and that brotherhood, really, really shine through. I tell them all the time that locker room is more important than the coach's room. Um, I think early on, I thought it would be in success that I would really realize the importance of that brotherhood. I'll tell a quick story. We lost a game in the College World Series to Vanderbilt. We took a 1-run lead into the ninth inning. We had our Friday starter come back into the game to pitch. He was the pitcher year of the conference, Brendan Beck, and I think he must have mowed down the first 5 guys. I think he might have struck out all 5. But I think they chink a hit here, or they get a walk with two strikes. They hit a ball that a guy had never hit in that spot on any chart that we've charted. They tie the game, and with a runner at third, as he's delivering the pitch, it's humid in Omaha. He feels the ball slipping out of his hand, and he tells himself, don't throw it in the dirt. Well, he didn't, but he threw it over the catcher's head. And Vanderbilt beats us by a run. And we knew that the winner of that game was going to go to the College World Series final. It was during the COVID year. We had heard the rumblings that North Carolina State was having some issues with COVID, and that the winner of that Vanderbilt Stanford game was probably going to walk into the finals,
Mm.
which is what happened. So we knew we were playing for. Extremely heartbreaking for the team, but was most heartbreaking was not that they lost. I think they felt the most pain that they weren't going to chance to play with each other anymore. And the other thing is they would not let Brendan Beck feel like that was the reason we didn't win. They were not going to let him feel that he was responsible, whether it's because of opportunities we had earlier in the game, whether it's that the reason that we're there was he was the pitcher of the year in the conference and got us there, whether the fact that he challenged this whole program, that he came back as a senior to go to Omaha and play for a national championship. They were not going to let him feel like the season was resting on his shoulders. And it was at that moment in losing, I knew that I had delivered exactly what I wanted to, which was I had a team that was as close as brothers and they were playing with their best friends.
Ooh, that's fantastic right there. I love the way you kind of not direct traffic, but orchestrate that band of brothers mentality. I think that's cool. It's obviously I've been in locker rooms where the chemistry's been off, right? Whether it's player related or whether it's maybe an instance with the coach, whatever it is. But it sounds like that's a fantastic atmosphere to play in, be a student athlete for. That's just fantastic. Obviously, I'm sure it attributes, to the success that you've delivered to the program. Last question I got for you, Coach. So this is the 9-hole podcast. When you are thinking about a 9-hole hitter, which I made it to the big leagues in the 9-hole. I got lucky. That's me right there. I try to embody that personality. I know what it means to me. What does the 9-hole mean to you when you think about a 9-hole hitter? What are the characteristics? What kind of game is he playing? And more specifically, what does a student athlete, a baseball player, need to do in order to earn the 9-hole spot in your lineup?
The 9-hole is an important spot in my batting order. As a matter of fact, if I was in the National League, the pitcher would hit eighth because the 9-hole to me, I'm going to have a productive leadoff hitter. And my leadoff hitter has got to be able to come through with a hit with runners in scoring position. My 9-hole guy has to be able to turn that lineup over. He has to be able to either get on base or he's going to set the table so that my one hitter can be a productive player. So his ability to hit with 2 strikes, for me to move the runners 3-1, 3-2, for me to be able to put a bunt down and put guys in scoring position, for me to be able to he's the guy that's going to be the dagger, because if I set the table up where my 8 hitter has to set the table for him, because that may be one of my maybe the one hitter is more of the lightning in a bottle guy. He's the guy that's really the wild card. But the 9 guy has to be consistently able to give me a chance to turn the lineup over in a positive position for my leadoff guy. And so it's not just anybody, right? It's not just anybody. If it's a guy that can foul off some pitches and draw a walk, if it's a guy that can move the runners up, and again, just the fact that he's just not a swing and miss guy, that all of a sudden I got runners on base and I'm going to end up, I can't move him. But he has to be multifaceted, but he also has to be able to set the table too. I might need him to get that hit, the one that's just the dagger, the 9 guy. I set it up with the 8 guy. He moves some runners up and the 9 guy drives them in. Or now, hey, I got an inning starting to go and it's first and second, nobody out. And now I can do something with him to really set the table when I flip that lineup over for 1 and 2.
Ooh, that fires me up. That might have been one of the best answers I've ever heard with that question I've been asking. Coach Esker, I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm so grateful and honored to have you on this podcast. Man, is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to leave off with?
No, I appreciate it. It's been great. Yeah, I love getting a chance to talk about the team baseball and my experience here at Stanford. It's marked my life. I'm here today because of the lessons I learned when I played here at Stanford for Coach Marquis. I knew that maybe coaching baseball and coaching college baseball was a worthwhile profession because I knew the impact it had on me as a person. I say the little things that Coach Marcus taught me that I tease people. I say whether I worked at a major corporation, worked at a gas station, or worked at 7-Eleven, the habits that I took from my college baseball experience: one, I was going to be on time. Two, I was going to know about work ethic, and three, I was going to be really uncomfortable around people who accepted mediocrity. I didn't want to be around them. I don't want to be part of my organization. And then I'm going to try to find a way that my branch or my gas station or my store at 7-Eleven is going to be the best store around and have an impact on other people, whether it's how we serve people, or just be the atmosphere and have a good group and good camaraderie among the people that work there that would make us ultimately a good place to work and a great place to be.
Oof. Amen. Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Coach Esker, thank you again for your time. We look forward to your continued success this year heading in to your 7th season as head coach. Thank you guys again. We will catch you next week.